Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. We are so excited about today having one of our distinguished alumna here, as well as, oh, by the way, Commissioner of State Education. So we look at it that way. We've given her a nice tour of her alma mater, and I think it's fair to say it's changed a little bit, and hopefully for the better. But now it's my honor to introduce the president of Daemen College, Dr. Gary Olson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I also want to thank Commissioner Elia for coming back home to Daemen College to share your vision with us on policies and issues that face the state in higher education. I'm also honored to welcome back a familiar face to our campus and a longtime leader in the higher education arena, Dr. John DeGaudy, Deputy Commissioner of Higher Education. Thank you for coming with us as well. And finally, I want to personally thank Ms. Laura Anglin, President of the Commission on Independent Colleges and Universities, for traveling all the way from Albany to be here with us today. Laura does a remarkable job, by the way, of representing the New York State's independent colleges, the non-for-profit colleges at CICU. In fact, help me recognize Laura for all she does. I would like to start by recognizing some of the people that are with us today. I think we have 19 presidents. I can see right in front of me the president of Bonaventure, St. Bonaventure, Sister Carney. I can see my good friend from Hilbert, Cynthia Zane, is here. And Catherine Conway Turner, president of Buff State, is here. Corey Duckworth, president of Jamestown. Charles Edmondson, president of Alfred. Sister Marcella Garris, president of Villa Maria College, is here. I said John Hurley already. Ken Maker, president of Medaille, is also here. Jim Mayer was going to be here, president of Niagara, but he's not today. Dennis Roach, president of DeUville. Virginia Hovarth, the president of SUNY Fredonia. Skip Sullivan, president of Alfred State. James Sunser, president of Genesee, and I already mentioned Cynthia Zane. She must get tired of always coming last in these lists anyway. Let's congratulate them and thank them for being here with us today. Our commissioner holds a very important spot, as you can see. She was confirmed by the regents in May, and her position includes jurisdiction over 270 public, independent, and proprietary colleges and universities in our state. And we're proud to have her here today. And rather than go through a very long and distinguished bio, which I think you've all heard now in the newspaper coverage over and over again, I'm just going to turn this over to her, and there'll be questions and answers afterwards. So, Dr. Elia.
So, good afternoon. I guess is it still morning? I've been on one of my tours. Let me just start by saying that it is wonderful to be back to New York. And it's particularly wonderful to have a sign like I have outside that says welcome back home because, as you well know, I graduated from Rosary Hill College, now Daemen College. And as I was walking through the campus and looking at the different buildings, it was truly a flashback, right? And seeing pictures that I remember passing a million times in hallways. It was just, it's great, and the work that's been done by Gary and the staff here is just phenomenal and growing what I think is really moving a small college into the 21st century. I also had the opportunity to go to the animation department that they have, and it was great. And I'd love to get to so many of the colleges that are represented here today, and I want to thank all of you for coming. I truly am convinced that the best way that we can support both New York State, but the country, is to have a really very, very vibrant PK, almost birth to 20 system. And it has to be connected. So my comments today, for the most part, are about ways that I think that the colleges and universities in New York can support our student pipeline to get to you. First of all, I've seen and heard and experienced graduates from many of your institutions who have been extremely successful and, in fact, are working in our schools and in our offices in various places across the state. I have put on 10,000 miles on my car, and that's in a short 3-month period. And I can say to you that it is really like coming home in so many of these communities. But the thing that I think is very obvious is that many of our students graduating from our high schools are going and staying into our universities and colleges here in the SUNY, the CUNY system, and the independent system. And that's a wonderful thing. You have a much better chance of keeping the alumni from your institutions here in the state if we're providing a quality, connected educational system to them. So the partnerships, I will tell you, my experience has been as a leader of a very large school district. Hillsborough County, Tampa is the 8th largest in the nation. We had over 200,000 students, certainly not the size of New York State. Nor even New York City, but a large system. And in that system, the way that things worked best is when we were connected with the community, with other agencies, with other schools, whether they be public, private, charter, to make sure that we were all on the same page. And the other thing that I learned as a superintendent in that district was that breaking down the communications to be successful between all of these various institutions is sometimes not easy. So anyone who doesn't think you're part of a bureaucracy, does not think that, raise your hand. So I can tell you, we all are part of bureaucratic systems. I'm not saying that in a negative, pejorative way. I'm just saying we are. And very often systems don't like to communicate. They get very kind of established and set in their ways. But I will tell you that the way that you break through those systems and you establish the model programs that are very collaborative are the most successful programs that you have often. And they're the ones that people most remember about good work that's being done across various agencies. So the concept of partnership in New York and collaboration, I hope to take to a new level. I've had the opportunity to see some great work that was done with investment from the state in Buffalo. And some of you, I'm sure, have benefited from that, and just being part of a community that is being revitalized with various agencies working to make that happen, I think is really powerful. And as the educators of the state, we need to all be part of that. So a couple of the partnerships I want to highlight that I've seen that have been extremely positive are partnerships like our P-TECH programs. We now have, I think, 26, and we're moving to add 7 more this year. Those programs target a college university through, for the most part, the CUNY and SUNY system, but there are other partners with them. Also, a business partner or multiple business partners, and our high schools. Usually centered around the BOCES programs, but clearly supporting high school students to be connected to what I think is an opportunity for them. We all want, and we probably, I look around the room, most of us have children or maybe some grandchildren. We all want them to have a great education. We need to provide that same education, the same kind of high-quality education to all students in the state. And I can tell you right now it's not happening. And we need to be very focused on what we can do to make sure that we have high-quality opportunities and high-quality programming across the state of New York. That will happen if we join together. We have a much better chance of having high quality provided with all the universities, colleges, working together with the agencies that support families and social services working together, and having them be focused on what our children and our families in this community and all communities across New York State need. And one thing I've also learned in my 10,000-mile trip is that there is such variation in communities across the state. We have school districts that have one school, a K-12 setting, and obviously we've got to think differently about how we provide opportunities for the students in that school than what we might provide in the center of New York City, the center in Buffalo, and a very large comprehensive high school, and the way we provide it. And so thinking differently, partnering with each other is what really will make the opportunities happen. When I mentioned to you the idea of having partnerships, I've got it, Gary, thank you, of having partnerships with our institutions, that all of us are living in bureaucracies. But I can tell you, as the superintendent in a large district, large districts in any district have a bureaucracy. Have any of you experienced that? You have. And I am an agent to facilitate the kind of partnerships that I think have to occur. And so the one really, I think, thoughtful thing that was done in New York really over a century ago was the establishment of the position of commissioner. There are very few states where the commissioner has the kind of entree into both college, universities, independent systems, and the K-12 system. And oh, by the way, the museums and the libraries and the public television stations, et cetera. But I am very anxious to use the connections that I have in this position to make sure that we all work together. And so often in those school districts that haven't had that experience, or in your organization that haven't thought of yourself as the role that you really can take in our partnership and the development of that, I'd like to facilitate that, and I'll be very proactive in that. I've said in a number of settings to our superintendents, this is how we can move the agenda for students K-20, and as I said, go down to birth, because that's probably the reality of where we need to be, but certainly pre-K-20 to what we need to do to move the agenda for students. And let's say this very honestly, our students in our schools ultimately are your students. So if they're prepared better to come to you, if their skill set is more preparing them for the jobs of the future that you're going to then go on and train them for and support them for in a great education, then we all win, and particularly the students of the state win. And so I'm very anxious to facilitate the partnerships that I think are potentially built across the state. So my staff, and John particularly, is very anxious to do some things to help you. We have streamlined some of the processes that are involved with getting programs approvals. We're anxious to look at any of the things that you have that you feel like SED has caused you barriers to doing good work in our state. We want to make sure that we are friendly to the things that you need, and we need you to be friendly to the agencies that need your support across the state. So in each of your communities, some of you are very close here in Buffalo, and I can say that Buffalo and the other school systems around here are very anxious and will be very proactive in expanding the opportunities with those colleges and universities that are in this community. But also we have Bonaventure, and I heard Alfred and other places, other communities, all of whom really, as we shift, and I have to say I'm holding my last kind of exciting point for you to be a discussion of where we are with higher standards that ultimately I think greatly affects the students that come into your doors. But as we move forward on the implementation of higher standards in New York State, it's really critical that we be connected, that the professors and the teachers, that are in your programs across the state understand what our students are challenged with, what our teachers are challenged with particularly, that you prepare, if you have an ed department that's strong, that you make it stronger by making strong connections to the realities of the standards that our teachers are teaching students and the appropriateness of the pedagogy to teach that, but also that you know and your faculty knows that we are working very hard to prepare our students better so that when they leave us, a remediation is not the norm. It can't be. It's too discouraging for people. And so we have to shift some of the things that I think we've become pretty complacent with and just say we can't do this anymore. Let's figure out a better way to move forward to educate the students here. And my last thing before I open it up to questions, we have just opened up a website that will allow any of you, anyone who's interested, and we hope certainly that our teachers and practitioners in our schools, our administrators, our parents, school board members, and all of you who are involved in education will go and give us feedback on the standards that we have been implementing across the state. They were adopted approximately 5 years ago by the regents, and you know them as Common Core, standards that were adopted in over 40 states across the country. Some of them now have moved back, and as I've said a number of times, the standards have become political. And that really shouldn't be the case. You know, we should all know what our students need to be successful. And we have been changing standards in this country, in the education world, since 1647. And we will continue to change standards. There certainly are highlights in our lives that we can remember when A Nation at Risk was published. We looked at what happened in our schools and what was happening and what did we need to do, and we raised standards. When the Sputnik went up, we decided, oh my goodness, we can't get left behind, and we needed to change standards. We have reacted to things that have become obvious to us. And it's not unusual for us to change standards. And to be perfectly honest, I think it's important for all of us to be part of a review of the standards. So we are reviewing the standards. We hope that you'll go online. It's the website, nysed.gov, and access that survey. And you and your staffs, who I'm pretty convinced want to have college and career-ready students, if you would go on and give us feedback on the standards and some of the sequencing and the things that we hear. What has really have been kind of an eye-opener for me, because being with people that are working with the standards all the time, with teachers and administrators, we're pretty familiar with them. But I've had so many people say that they hate Common Core, and when I ask them about what standard don't they like, and there are over 1,000, 2,000 of them really, most of them have never read them, and they don't understand what they are, and they don't understand that that is the goal, and that our teachers build the curriculum to the standards. And so I think it's really important we get a knowledge base out there and really solicit from parents and others, particularly our teachers and practitioners, what is it we need to do if there's any changes that are needed in those high standards. So I urge you all to share the information about the survey. We did send out a lot to all of the mailing lists that I have. So you may have gotten that personally, but if you didn't, please go on and urge your faculties to go on and give us some feedback on the standards. So this has been a pleasure to be here. It's certainly been a pleasure to come back to Rosary Hill / Damon. And I'd like to open it up to questions now.
Thank you very much. We're delighted that everybody's here. We had a great turnout. I'd like to let the presidents and their representatives who are here do at least the first round and engage the commissioner in questioning.
Commissioner Margaret Carney from St. Bonaventure. I think if I were today in an elementary or secondary classroom, which I was 6 lifetimes ago, keeping up morale would be a full-time job.
Yeah.
And we know particularly in our region here. But one of the things that I think would be enormously helpful would be to catch us in the act of doing right, especially those of us who have schools of education and are graduating the next group of teachers for the state of New York. Obviously, we've all taken a hit because the changes in hiring have meant decreased enrollments for our schools. That's beginning to pick up a bit. But I believe that each of us is working really hard to create the generation of teachers who know how to use Common Core, who are clear about assessment, know they're in a bureaucracy, but are totally loving their profession. And might there be a way for us to lift up the profession by helping the young men and women moving into it by shining a light and getting the help that they need scholarship-wise? We've got great scholarships for STEM and everything else. What about the next generation of educators?
Well, no, I think that's a really important point. First of all, we have, as a nation, been extremely negative over the last, I would say, about 20 years, but it's actually been heavily in the last 10 years. We have created the image that all teachers are bad. Yet when you say to people across the country, to anyone, legislators, governors, people in the Department of Education, and people in any life, people who have made significant wealth and are sharing it, what really made you successful, and inevitably they go to a teacher in their life. And those same people are still working in many cases and out there influencing students every day. I think we as a nation have to move the agenda on support for teachers. The only way that students are successful, whether it's successful today at the standards we have, whether it's going to be successful in the next 10 years, is because they have great teachers in front of them. It is the only thing that consistently affects children. And so I think we have a job to make sure that people start thinking differently about educators, and I'm working hard in New York State to focus on that. I am a teacher. I taught for 19 years. I never wanted to leave the classroom. It just was kind of freaky that I did. But I feel like I've got the opportunity now to really focus on the important things for teachers, which is to understand, yes, that there are standards for them, and we need to have high-quality teachers in front of our students who every day are trying to get better. But the programs, and I think this is a really good point, the programs that we have in New York supporting teachers are substantial, and they've done some really good work. We have some scholarships available, and I'm working with the president of SUNY, and the chancellor of SUNY, she's very interested in expanding those opportunities, and of course that affects the independents as well. But I think it's really a critical thing for us to make sure that we have a diverse group of teachers, well prepared, coming out of your institutions, that you're proud when they're going in and to create the environments for their children and your children and the children of New York State, that those are quality environments. So I'm working hard on that, and I am very focused on expanding the opportunities for students to have additional support to be able to go to whatever college they choose in the state and end up as great teachers for our classrooms.
Thank you. Cynthia Zane, Hilbert College. 2 comments and then a question. First, thank you for coming, and it was so affirming to hear your commitment to partnerships. And on behalf of one of 21 presidents in this consortium, I just want you to know that it's and you're from this region.
I am.
And that in this region, we have been told from other colleagues around the state that the consortium that we have here, that includes SUNY and our independent sector, and one of our institutions is a for-profit institution in Bryant and Stratton, that the way that we're working together, the shared programming we're doing at Women's Leadership Institute and Academic Leadership Institute is unique and different than many other regions in the state. So I just wanted you to know that we're walking the walk, and we're very excited to hear your affirming that that's the direction that you hope to see in the rest of the state. Second comment I would say is that I think it's also very exciting when you're talking about the partnerships with the high school. So we're not only partnering within our sectors. I know that every president sitting here has some kind of a partnership with BOCES and other high schools. So I think, again, that to the extent that the lessons that we've learned, sometimes the mistakes we've had to overcome can be a resource for you, we're happy to do that. My question is, a number of us are very interested in following the progress we're making on the state, the SARA Act, the authorization in terms of our online programs.
Yes.
And the reciprocity associated with that. And I just wondered if you could give us an update of where you see this on your priority list and what kind of timeline you think it's going to take to get this moving forward.
Well, so we have John here with us, who's an expert on this, but we have had conversations on it. We are absolutely supporting that. It's got to be a legislative action, and so we are working hard with the legislators. I know that you are as well, and we anticipate that we might be able to get that through this year. We're going to work very hard on making sure that happens. And I do think that all of the schools, that is one of the agendas that I've heard from Chancellor Zimpher, as well as from your organization and others. So it's really a pretty critical thing for us. We believe it's very important as well.
Commissioner Hurley, John Hurley from Canisius College.
Hi, John.
And, in the event that you haven't heard this yet, and you may have, I've been in meetings, 2 meetings in the past week with Dr. Reiner Cash, our new superintendent here in Buffalo, and we know of your involvement in the search that brought him here. We welcome him to Buffalo, and he's saying all the right things.
He will do all the right things too.
Well, that's my point. A lot of our schools have schools of education, and we have a long track record of working with the district. And I expressed to Dr. Cash the other night, and just so that you hear it from one of the college presidents, it has not been a great experience working with the district. So when you talk about partnerships, I urged him. Our faculty and our deans are reaching out. They're trying to, I think, approach it on a systemic basis and look for the big picture. And they run smack dab into the middle of what appears to be an intractable bureaucracy in the Buffalo School District. He said the other night he appreciated that. He's going to work on it. But I guess I wouldn't underestimate that force in the district, and it's something that has to happen, because while you have this incredible resource of schools of education in the region, the district is going outside and spending tens of millions of dollars on outside consultants to do what a lot of our schools could do and could access federal grants just as well to do. And so we've got to find a way to take advantage of that resource and that opportunity in the area, because we are all committed to the notion that, you know, as the city of Buffalo goes, and as the schools go in the city of Buffalo, so goes the region.
So I underscore everything you've said, and he and I have had that conversation. And from a district that was very large, very diverse, and had major institutions in it that had education departments. It is, as I said, it's very difficult sometimes to break down those barriers that exist in both institutions. And here you have multiple institutions to work with. Sometimes that is complicated. One of the things that we found particularly helpful, and I had a conversation with Gary. Gary's had experience in the university that's right in Tampa, at the University of South Florida. The community college president, Ken Atwater, the college president, university president, Judy Genshaft, and I met regularly, and we had, the school system had a person that was chosen by the university in a process that had all of us represented in that, and her sole job was to break down the barriers, to know who to go to if there were things being done, and they were being done in the Department of Arts and Sciences or the College of Arts and Sciences, Nobody could access the school system, and we couldn't access the university unless that person was involved, and they were a master at breaking down the kinds of barriers that you're talking about. I don't think you're in a position right now to put a person together, but that is ultimately maybe where you want to be. But I think that that we can work together. Dr. Cash is very committed to making the shifts that need to occur, and is well aware that there are many resources here that have not been used to support the school system in Buffalo, and it has to change. And so he's very aware of that. We do have some other opportunities. It's possible that some of the schools will need some very intense support as we move forward in making sure that all of our schools that have for a very long time had difficulty, that there's people that can come in and support that. So the possibility exists for any of the universities or colleges locally to be part of that process. But I will say to you that I'm committed, and I know that he is committed as well, and I'll facilitate those things happening. So any of you who are having difficulty, if we want to have a meeting here, let's reschedule something, get the college presidents and the deans together. I'll encourage Dr. Cash to join me, and we'll make sure that we can be there and actually do some real heavy lifts then. And I think sometimes it doesn't always happen, and there's some changes I know that he's making in staffing at the district level, but all of those things I think will be part of what will be a growing relationship. The universities and the colleges in this area need to help, and he needs the help. Morning.
I'm Dick Lynn. I'm the representative today from Trocaire College.
Oh.
And I wanted to thank you for mentioning the P-TECH initiative, because as you probably know, we were one of the early recipients of a P-TECH grant, and it's been quite successful. What we found is we're working with BOCES, with Catholic Health System, and Lackawanna Public School System.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Lackawanna is about 3 miles away from our site, we'd never talked to them before. So it's already created a connection, which has been very positive for us. So I'm wondering if you could speak about the future initiatives by the state to increase P-TECH initiatives or initiatives like these to keep the ball rolling.
Sure. So I think we have such a strong track record, yours and other programs that were the first in lineup, and now we're up to 27 with 7 being added, and each of them is very unique to the specific area, to the strengths of the area and the institutions, and as you pointed out, you never really knew Lackawanna before, but you now are friends. And I think that kind of thing can happen across the state. There are many areas within the state where, of course, we have a BOCES program across the state. The only, it's an interesting phenomenon. There's 5 big cities other than New York that actually don't participate in the BOCES, but the rest of the state has representation in the BOCES and services from them. So it's very easy to connect the BOCES to the college, and then they know all of the school systems. But I think any of you can rest assured there are school systems in this area, whether it's the city's school systems or any of the suburban and or other rural school systems that need that kind of support, and working with the BOCES has been very positive. I would anticipate, because of the success, that there'll be continued funding through the governor's budget. He was the initiator of the programs, is very proud of them, and that ultimately we'll have a continued extension of them. So we're at 7 this coming year, and if our requests, we're going to put in some requests for expansions of that and discuss that with the governor, but I think that would be certainly something that's on the horizon. So any of you who may not have been involved and you'd like to be, we can facilitate kind of connections to programs you may have that would help and help us in the development of our students. The interesting thing about the programs, the P-TECHs, is that these are students that probably walk to a different drummer. Smart kids. Probably don't like traditional schools. Probably are bored. But they really get involved when they have opportunities that is connected to a real situation for them. So maybe they're going to have a job afterwards. They get summer internships. They get connected in different environments to the work they're doing. There's a lot of project-based learning, and it's really, I think, moving a number of students in that direction. And ultimately, they end up with a high school diploma and either an associate degree, or depending on the program, could be more, but either go on then to finish up at a college or university, or go directly into the job market. IBM was one of the first ones that supported this, and they're hiring people right now for $50,000 who are coming out of their P-TECH programs. So it really is the potential, I think, to, as you addressed in your point, the education system will totally affect the communities that they're in. And Buffalo will be affected by the opportunities that they either provide or they don't provide to the students and the potential workforce that they have living in this community. So we anticipate and hope that there's an expansion of P-TECH, but let me say there are a lot of other programs that you've all participated in some way. The opportunities that we have to have our students in high school get supports, students that generally wouldn't have gone on, and they are supported in our programs now, particularly our minority students that have ability, but they just don't see themselves as being successful. And the wraparound and kind of support services that you've provided for them have been particularly helpful. So we're very anxious to expand those opportunities and to think of more creative ways that we can do it. Early college settings are wonderful. Putting through MOUs, putting high school students in college courses that they're actually getting credit through your universities and colleges. That's a wonderful opportunity. So it helps to create this whole synergy of kids thinking, I can do this, I can do what I want, and I can be successful in a field that I've already identified. I was earlier talking to somebody who said, you know, the kids of today will change 3 or 4 times what their careers are going to be. It doesn't bother them. That is not the reality of my generation and many of yours, that you thought you went into a field, you became prepared for it. Many people stay in that field, but a lot of them, and the generations that we're living with now that our children or grandchildren are in, they will think differently about moving around in jobs, and that's okay. We just need to know that that's the case and make sure that they're prepared for whatever opportunities they want to take advantage of. So the whole idea of college and career should be a choice. Students are only going to be successful if they can choose and do what they want. We can't force kids to be successful in something they don't like. And so the P-TECH program is one of those places where the kids love to be there, and they're learning, and they're doing some very, very good work, and ultimately that's going to bring their success. Okay? Anybody else? Yes.
I'm Sister Denise Roach, and I'm at Jubal College.
Yes.
We do have a Buffalo Public High School on campus, and it's very successful. However, it's rather small in comparison to the other schools. My concern, though, is that for a student to go to that high school, the student needs a parent or guardian to support the choice. There are many, many other students, in fact, families in Western New York whose parents or guardians do not emphasize education,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a tremendous dropout rate. And what we read in the paper the other day was about absenteeism. So I guess what I'm asking you is, 5 years down the road, is there any idea or plan that would help those students to get them excited about education, or at least get them in the door to do something creative and enriching that would make them want to continue their education?
Well, so this is a real challenge that we have, because it's almost as though we haven't been able to connect successfully with their parents, maybe single parent, guardian perhaps, and that's because that individual may not have themselves had a good experience in schools and colleges, or even have experienced colleges. Some of them may not have been successful in our settings, and therefore it's hard for them to project to their children, well, this is what you could use and this is what you could do. We have to shift that. It's a major focus for us. We've been talking about whether we put some human resources in the department into looking at what are some of the very positive strategies that have existed in New York and in other places that have really turned around that whole dynamic between family and parents and what's happening at school. There are a number of things being done in New York City, including things like teachers doing home visits before school starts to try to connect young children, particularly and their families, to the teacher. We're looking at whether or not that is something that we can find the great strategies that are working, and then make sure that people are aware that these are things that have really, we have great outcomes for, and then put those things in place. I will tell you that most of that work has to be done at the school level, right? You can, from a state, try to talk about and think this is what's good for children. We can do some programming on public radio and public TV, which we're going to do about the importance of going on to college and then how we can facilitate that for parents, just kind of the process things. But the real connection of families and parents to what education can provide for them is something that is really a very focused agenda, but it happens at a school site, the people that are closest to the parents and closest to the child, and that's ultimately the teachers that you're preparing for our schools and the administrators and ed leaders that we have that really have to be focused on making those connections. So it is a huge area for us. For some of you, it might be an area that you could help us with, and we really would love to have that kind of opportunity. I know Dr. Cash is facing some really challenging numbers in terms of attendance, and he's looking at a lot of things that might be able to facilitate better attendance, which is a different student assignment pattern. Now you have students in Buffalo who are involved in a school site that's not close to their home. And if the bus comes and the bus is overcrowded or the bus is late, students say, well, not today, and they walk away. And what happens is you don't have them then persistent in making sure they're at school every day. So he's looking at a lot of different things that may shift that. But I think ultimately what we have to do is those schools that have the students there have to be the projectors of how important it is that students attend every day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I see a round of applause?